Okay, so today we're going to be talking about Lady Catherine de Bourgh. That is right, the super mean aunt of Mr. Darcy who wants to break up Elizabeth and Darcy forever. She is one of the most famous mean girls of Jane Austen literature, but have you ever wondered, why is she a lady? What is her title? Exactly what makes her so fancy? Well, in today's video, we're going to be breaking down what's going on with her title of lady, because it's actually very interesting and very unique among Jane Austen's characters. And we're going to be going a little bit more into the question you guys keep asking of whether Mr. Darcy could inherit Lady Catherine's title and become a lord. Anyway, definitely stay tuned for all of that. My name is Ellie Dashwood, and this is my channel where we talk about history and literature. If you like either of those things, please subscribe. So first up, who is Lady Catherine? Well, she's Mr. Darcy's aunt in Pride and Prejudice. And to understand her title, let's go all the way back to when she was just a little girl. At that stage of her life, she would have been known as Lady Catherine Fitzwilliam. That's correct. Imagine Lady Catherine as a kid. I mean, her governess's life must have been awful. Just imagine this for a second. It's kind of terrifying. So Lady Catherine Fitzwilliam would have had that title of lady ever since birth because her father was an earl. The daughters of earls get to use the title lady and then their first name and last name. So Lady Catherine Fitzwilliam, and that is usually shortened down to lady first name in everyday conversation. So Lady Catherine. And really, courtesy titles like this is something I go into more in depth in my video on what is an English lord, so definitely check that out if you want to know more about titles and nobility in general. There's a few things we know about Lady Catherine Fitzwilliam. First, she had at least one brother who was going to become the next earl, and one sister named Anne. Now, Lady Anne Fitzwilliam grew up and married a Mr. Darcy. Yep, Lady Anne becomes the mother of Mr. Darcy. Meanwhile, Lady Catherine's brother eventually becomes the next earl when their father dies, and he has at least two sons. One of them, the older one, who's going to inherit the earl title next, and then also the younger son of Colonel Fitzwilliam. But what about Lady Catherine? What happens to her next? Well, she gets married too, and to discover her husband's name, let's look at this section of Mr. Collins' letter to the Bennet family. He says, "I have been so fortunate as to be distinguished by the patronage of the Right Honourable Lady Catherine de Bourgh, widow of Sir Lewis de Bourgh, whose bounty and beneficence has preferred me to the valuable rectory of this parish." That is right. Lady Catherine grows up and marries some guy named Sir Lewis. And together they have one daughter named Anne de Bourgh. So yes, if you're looking at the family tree here, this does make Anne de Bourgh, Colonel Fitzwilliam, and Mr. Darcy all first cousins. So this may be the first time that some of you are realizing that throughout the whole book of Pride and Prejudice, people want Mr. Darcy to marry his first cousin. But that was much more common during the era. Though here is an important note. A lot of people think that Elizabeth Bennet and Mr. Collins are first cousins, when really they are not. The book calls him a distant relation. Meanwhile, first cousins, even though you could marry them, were still considered a closer relation. So while Elizabeth and Mr. Collins are probably some form of cousin, they are more distantly related than being first cousins. The reason they call him cousin throughout the book is that was just a common way to refer to your extended family relatives during the time. So while Elizabeth and Mr. Collins aren't really first cousins, Mr. Darcy and Anne de Bourgh are really first cousins related by blood because their mothers are sisters. Anyway, that's just a random side note. Back to Lady Catherine, she's now married to this guy named Sir Lewis de Bourgh. So let's look at the Sir part of Sir Lewis. Sir was a form of address for both knights and baronets. We have a lot of knights and baronets in Jane Austen's works. The most important difference between them, I think, is the fact that baronets can pass along the Sir to their sons, while a knight cannot. It is a one-generation thing. So, for example, since Sir Walter Elliot in Persuasion is a baronet, he can pass along his baronet status to his son or the next male in the male line from the original title holder, which in Persuasion is Mr. Elliot. Meanwhile, simple knights like Sir William Lucas in Pride and Prejudice cannot pass that on to anybody else. His Sir status is going to die with him. So knights and baronets were usually called Sir and then their first name, and their wives were called Lady and then their last name. And we see this consistently done throughout Jane Austen's books. In Mansfield Park, we have Sir Thomas married to Lady Bertram. In Sense and Sensibility, we have Sir John married to Lady Middleton. In Pride and Prejudice, we have Sir William married to Lady Lucas. And in Persuasion, we have Sir Walter married to Lady Elliot. So exactly what is going on here? Why, when she got married, did Lady Catherine not become Lady de Bourgh? All the other baronets and knights' wives are Lady last name. Why is she still Lady first name? And to answer that question, we have to talk a little bit about knights and baronets and where they stood in the social hierarchy. So I think to us, often the sound of Sir and Lady when it comes to knights and baronets can sound super fancy, like, wow, they're a Sir. They must be super high ranking. But the truth is, knights and baronets actually were not that high ranking when compared to true titled families. And I think it can be a little bit confusing when we talk about the word title, because technically even something as simple as Miss is a title, right? But when we talk about the upper class and nobility, what we're talking about is titles of the English peerage system, those titles of actual nobility, like Earl and Viscount and Baron and Duke. Those are true titles. Meanwhile, knights and baronets were not considered nobility. They were not considered titled, and in fact, they were considered commoners. They ranked quite a bit below anybody with those titles of nobility. So let's actually look at something Lady Catherine says when she's describing the family background of her daughter and Mr. Darcy. She says, "They are descended on the maternal side from the same noble line, and on the father's from respectable, honored, and ancient, though untitled, families." So do you see how even though Anne de Bourgh's father was a Sir, she says that Anne does not descend from a titled family? Because again, he was not a member of the nobility. He did not have one of those true noble titles. Meanwhile, Lady Catherine did descend from one of those noble families. Again, she was the daughter of an earl. So when Lady Catherine married Sir Lewis, she was marrying someone who was beneath her on the social hierarchy. Now, they were still in the same social sphere, they were still all in the upper class, but when it came down to the direct pecking order within that sphere, she was above him by about 12 levels of precedence. Meaning if they were lining up according to their social ranking to go into dinner, she would be way ahead of him in line. So usually during this era, when a woman got married, she would take on her husband's precedence and social standing. However, again, if Lady Catherine did that, she would be taking a 12-level hit, which would be a major deal for someone like Lady Catherine. But thankfully for her, the rules of this state that a daughter of an earl, if she marries a commoner, can keep her higher title and her level of precedence upon marriage. So, when Lady Catherine married a commoner, she got to keep the precedence and also to stay Lady Catherine. Now, I feel like this is something that's super subtle in Pride and Prejudice that not a lot of people pick up on, but her being a lady first name is actually a huge social distinction compared to all of the lady last names. Being lady first name in this instance is a major social flex that gets lost on modern readers, I think, because it is a higher title. Now, on a complete side note, had Lady Catherine married a member of the peerage, like a baron, for example, she would have taken on his title and precedence because he was a member of the nobility. Even though in this instance, becoming a baroness would have made her take a lower title and lower precedence than what she had been born with, but because he was a member of the nobility, that's how it worked, but she got to keep hers because she married a commoner. So really quick, let's talk about this question that keeps coming up of whether Mr. Darcy could inherit a title from Lady Catherine or her husband. The answer is no, but here is why. First of all, Lady Catherine's title of Lady first name is again that courtesy title that she gets to use because she is the daughter of an earl. That is a status that she can't pass on to anybody. She can't be like, Darcy, you are now the daughter of an earl. That's not how that works. So she can't even pass that title along to her own daughter. And also, Mr. Darcy's mom already had the title of Lady Anne, so if he was going to be able to inherit that from anybody, it would be his own mother. But again, Lady Anne could also not pass along the status of being the daughter of an earl. So no title there for Mr. Darcy. The second option people wonder about is Sir Lewis's title. Could Darcy become Sir Fitzwilliam? And the answer is no. First off, if Sir Lewis was a knight, then that title died with him. He could not pass that on anybody. But if he was a baronet, he still couldn't pass that title to Darcy because really the only people who could inherit the title of being a baronet was a male blood descendant of the original title holder. So because Mr. Darcy is not the blood son of Sir Lewis, he has no hope of inheriting that title, even if he married his cousin Anne. Meanwhile, since men were the only ones who could inherit, Anne clearly did not inherit that title. So then the question comes up, what did happen to Sir Lewis's title if he was a baronet? One of two things. Either it died with him because there was no one else to inherit it, or it passed to another de Bourgh family male line descendant that could inherit the title. So it may have gone to one of Anne's cousins on that side of the family or something. Anyway, basically just to sum all of this up, Lady Catherine was born Lady Catherine, and when she got married, she did not want to take a 12 levels of precedence hit by becoming Lady de Bourgh, so she just stayed Lady Catherine, and is secretly flexing on us all, even though it's totally lost on everybody, mostly. Anyway, I hope this helped clear up any questions you had about Lady Catherine and her title. Let me know in the comments below if you were born, say the child of a high-ranking peer, and you had a higher title, and then you married a commoner. Would you keep your title? I think I would. I would stay Lady Electra. I'd be so fancy. Anyway, I hope you guys are all having an awesome and amazing day, and keep being awesome. Bye!